Folks, it wouldn't be another day in the NHL if it weren't for drama around the Arizona Coyotes, a team that has really been hanging on by a thread at the whim of Gary Bettman, seemingly for years at this point, after being moved to Arizona from Winnipeg. Of course, Winnipeg has gotten a team since then from Atlanta. And basically, for the last 25 years, the Coyotes have been a not very good hockey team that doesn't spend a lot of money. But things were starting to trend maybe in the right direction with a new owner, with a proposal for a new arena, and maybe potential to, have actual sustainable hockey with a potentially competitive team in Arizona. The problem is, I got to give you some background that doesn't look too great for the Arizona Coyotes as a whole, right? We're going to start here with an article from Katie Strang. Now, I'm not going to go into this too much. This was about 2 years ago, called Dysfunction in the Desert, Finger-Pointing Fear and Financial Woes, Royal, the Coyotes Organization. Now, this is talking about basically the new owner and CEO, a new owner and then CEO, Marulo and Xavier Gutierrez, and a bunch of problems that they've had. I highly recommend reading this. But one quote that is interesting is right here, and this is the part I'm going to highlight here. Marulo's acquisition of the Coyotes was supposed to portend a new era for the team. Instead, people within the organization across the NHL are now wondering if the league erred in approving his purchase. Quote, "If I was talking to a future employer, I'd say it's been a learning experience," said one employee. "But if I was being frank with you, I'd say it's a shit show." Not the best start. So how were the Coyotes going to go from basically, 10 months after the posting of that article, where they are then facing eviction from Gila River Arena for unpaid bills, maybe not really dodging the allegations from that initial article from Katie Strang. But basically, Gila River Arena comes up to them and says, "Hey, you aren't paying us money. You aren't paying us your rent. We are going to evict you by December 20th. Of course, they did, get out of that. They did pay the money that they needed to pay, at least the bare minimum, to stay in that arena for the rest of that season. But you might know that that's not where the Arizona Coyotes play right now. Right now, the Arizona Coyotes are playing at Mullet Arena, which is Arizona State's basketball stadium, ASU's university, Arizona State University's basketball stadium. And you might notice from this photo, it's not the biggest stadium. It seats, for NHL hockey games, 4,600 spectators. For reference, most NHL rinks are in the 17 to 19,000-ish range, right? Obviously, this is way fewer. And not sustainable for long term. But this wasn't meant to be a long-term plan, Mullet Arena. This was meant to be a stopgap because they were planning on this, the Tempe Entertainment District, a cool new 16,000, I believe, seat stadium that was going to have a practice facility and a sports lounge and basically just be the home of the Coyotes, moving the Coyotes from Glendale, which is a bit farther outside of Phoenix, to Tempe, where Arizona State University is a much younger crowd, where you're going to have, young up-and-coming fans be, buying into this hockey team that has a nice facility, probably fairly cheap seats for the first couple of years while the team's not super great, but try to build this fan base in a younger area of Phoenix. This proposal was approved unanimously by Tempe's City Council. I believe it was a 7-0 vote. So the Tempe City Council was all for this. It was a $2.1 billion project, including a 16,000-seat arena, 2 hotels, and 1,600 apartments. And the big part of this, and it's a little bit small here, is that this was going to be funded entirely by the ownership. Right? There was, quote, "no out-of-pocket cost / financial risk for Tempe." The ownership of the Coyotes was going to front $1.9 billion to pay for this entertainment complex, which on the surface sounds fantastic. That's how it should be. We shouldn't have, owners or the taxpayers subsidizing these arenas, where then the owners will get all of the financial benefit, right? These are billionaires. Marulo is a billionaire. He can afford to front some money for an arena that is going to make him money for the next 20, 30, 40 years. However, there's one line item right here. This site, and you can see they're this is Tempe Wins, the group that was for this proposal, saying the site is currently a $210 million liability to the city of Tempe. And their big quote was landfill to landmark, as you can see right here. It's a landfill now. We're going to turn it into a landmark, baby. However, the only thing that the city of Tempe was going to have to pay for was the environmental cleanup for this site, because it was a landfill. It's basically uninhabitable land to this point. So the city of Tempe was going to have to front about $210 million to get that cleaned up, which they have to do regardless. This is it's uninhabitable land. If this ever is going to be used, Tempe is going to have to front that $200 million to get this area cleaned up. However, the opposition here, which is called Tempe First, really hooked on to that. And they had a bunch of stuff of like, oh, they're going to get all of our sales tax, property tax. And most of this is false to my understanding. They're selling off public land at $25 an acre. Apparently it's actually $25 a square foot. That's nowhere near the same level. So they really hooked on to, hey, this is going to cost us more money. That it's supposed to be a billionaire. He can afford the $200 million. That shouldn't be us paying it. And that was the big sticking point for voters. That got through. As last night, Tempe voters deliver a resounding no to the Arizona Coyotes Arena and Development District. Each proposals 301, 302, and 303, all of them needing to be approved, all lost by between 10 and 12 percentage points. Xavier Gutierrez, the CEO of the Coyotes, says now what's next for our franchise will be evaluated by our owners and the NHL in the coming weeks. And here's a big key here. Who voted? Tempe voters age 65 plus had 63% turnout. So people who live in Tempe that were over the age of 65, 63% of them came out and voted. And that ended up being 43% of all voters. So almost half of the vote came from people over the age of 65. Old people vote. That's just a thing. So that's not great. 70% of the ballots came from people who voted in 3 of the last 3 Tempe elections. So it was the people who vote. The young people didn't go out and actually vote. And the big thing is, this is from Urinating Tree, but the data comes from a Frank Saravalli article. The Arizona Coyotes used $250,000, $250,000. And keep in mind, this is a team that plays in a league that is a $63 million minimum salary cap a year. So they pay, it's a multi-million-dollar operation the Coyotes have here. And this is a proposal worth $2 billion. The Arizona Coyotes paid $250,000 trying to push for people to vote for their proposal. Meanwhile, labor unions who were not guaranteed jobs in these projects and basically created this Tempe First movement, they spent $2.5 million to fight this. So 10x the spending from these labor unions compared to the billionaire who was trying to get his arena to get approved in Tempe. The numbers speak for themselves, guys. Marketing is very important, and the Arizona Coyotes just decided not to do it. So, what does this mean for the Arizona Coyotes? It means that they're basically without a home. The plan was to play in Mullet Arena for 3-4 years while this Tempe arena gets built, but now that's not going to happen. So what options are there? Well, Greg Wyshynski says, I don't believe that Alex Marullo has desire to own the team anywhere but Arizona, which means that basically if they are going to move outside of Arizona, they will likely need to get sold again. He says, I wonder if ultimately it's another year at Mullet before finding a new owner if one doesn't immediately step up. Darren Dreger says many things to consider related to the Arizona Coyotes news. One, could the Suns owner have interest in buying the Coyotes and moving them downtown? That might be ideal, although it would need a hockey renovation. Now, apparently that arena just went through a renovation, so that seems fairly unlikely. His second thought is Utah Jazz owner Ryan Smith has publicly expressed interest in an NHL team. Could Salt Lake City become a relocation target? Relocation fees are significant. This would leave Houston and Atlanta as potential expansion areas down the road, much larger expansion dollars. So there are options. Now, I'm going off a bit on a tangent here. I don't like the idea of expanding the league more. We have 32 teams already. I think that's a good number. That's the number the NFL has. That's the number the NBA is going to get to. We don't need to water this league down to 40 teams. I think that's silly, and it makes it less likely that my team will eventually win a Stanley Cup one day before I die, and I don't like that. However, Salt Lake City name keeps popping up. Urinating Tree again is saying that there's a certain owner in Houston that has an arena that can be converted to hockey, of course. And then we have more smoke on that Salt Lake City thing. Ryan Kennedy from the Hockey News saying, will the Arizona Coyotes move to Utah? It's a distinct possibility now. Greg Wyshynski last night at 10 p.m. saying, keep an eye on Salt Lake City as an NHL relocation destination. The owner of the Utah Jazz and their arena has tweeted recently that it's in motion. He's working on this. And Andy Strickland this morning at about 10 a.m. saying, hearing Salt Lake City appears to be the focus for the Arizona Coyotes internally among hockey ops, obviously still in early stages. So it sounds like the Arizona Coyotes are dead and will likely, be moving potentially to a Salt Lake City or maybe a Houston or an Atlanta. It seems to be Salt Lake City as the early favorite and then like a Houston as the number 2. It's just unfortunate. I mean, sure, the Arizona Coyotes have been really a disaster, but this is something that we'll have to follow. We'll have to see where they end up. And that's really it, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That is all from me. Have a good one.